Good morning. I am Susan Kaderka. I'm very happy to be here at this wonderful event. I'm going to start us off talking about monarch conservation in the urban space by talking a little bit about what the National Wildlife Federation and more importantly what cities and towns really throughout the flyway and throughout the country are doing on behalf of monarch conservation. I'm going to, okay, do I have to? Oh, the big one. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. So just a quick overview. I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of why urban areas are important. Katie just kind of alluded to that. Tell you a little bit about the National Wildlife Federation as an organization and kind of how we fit into this picture. And then I want to tell you what we've been doing in urban areas and in the flyway and across the country, and then have a little case study about what the city of Austin in particular is going to do. So that's kind of the drill there. So why are cities and towns important to monarch conservation? You know, we've been hearing a lot about conservation on private lands, and we're thinking about kind of ranch lands and farmlands and big kind of open areas, which is, you know, where what we used to think of as monarch habitat, the prairies. So why are cities important to that? Why aren't we just concentrating on that kind of conservation? Well, the answer is, it turns out that the small kind of garden-type patches of habitat that you can create and that you find in cities are actually really good for monarchs. There was a study done by, environmental entomology, in 2015, that found that monarchs actually deposited eggs more frequently in garden habitats than they did out in nature. It was like 2 to 6 times more eggs per leaf or per plant in the two years that they looked at that. So these are actually, you know, gardens that are designed for monarchs, and so it's not just a way of connecting urban people with nature as a way of educating them or everything. It's actually has really great habitat value for monarchs. So it's actually an important place for us to be working, along with doing these kind of larger swaths of land out in the country. Okay. So just a little bit about the National Wildlife Federation. This working with urban populations is something that comes very naturally to us. We're, as an organization, really interested, first of all, in just connecting people with nature where they live. And as Katie said, most of us live in cities and towns now. And we've had programs, you know, that sort of actually wind up kind of feeding into monarch conservation. Since the 70s, we've had this kind of gardening for wildlife program where we encourage people and provide resources for people to garden with native plants and create, you know, kind of water and shelter and habitat features in their own backyard so that they can attract birds and butterflies and, you know, frogs and other kinds of things that allow them to have nature in their own yard. So this is something we've been doing for a long time. We have certified 200,000 backyard habitats around the country. We also have now, in kind of more recent years, maybe the last 10 years or so, we've had a program for cities to get certified as community wildlife habitats. The city of Austin has been a community wildlife habitat for a long time, and just about 2 weeks ago I was in Houston to certify that city as the 100th certified community wildlife habitat. So there's a lot of interest. Yeah, it was great. and believe me, there was so much, I was at a city council meeting, and there was so much emotion around this. The city council members were so excited about it. It really is, this idea of connecting people with nature in urban areas is something that has a lot of resonance for people. So I don't want to get off track, but it was really fun to be there. So we are accustomed to working with people in urban areas on wildlife conservation, so we're kind of a natural for this. Our first step in our monarch conservation work, which started about not quite 2 years ago, was to create something we call the Mayor's Monarch Pledge. And these pictures are, the one on the left is our CEO Colin O'Mara with Mayor Francis Slay of St. Louis. He was the first mayor to sign the pledge. I think Austin was the second. And then on the right is Mayor Ivy Taylor of San Antonio, and San Antonio signed the pledge and has really gone whole hog. I'm going to talk about what it takes to be a Monarch champion, but they have signed up to do absolutely everything you can pledge to under the pledge, and so they were the first what we call Monarch champions. So we have 300 cities across the country have pledged to date. Just about a week ago, we accepted the pledge of the city of Philadelphia. So lots of really large cities and small towns, just a real range across the country. Probably about 200 in the flyway itself. Two of them I mentioned are Monarch champions. That means that there's 24 possible actions that a mayor can pledge to, and the city of San Antonio and the city of McAllen have pledged to all 24. So they are just in it, with everything they have. We also have, they report and everything, so we have how many actions they take. They have to take at least 3. So right now we're up to 863 actions, and about 6 or 7 per city is on average. So the cities are doing this in a pretty robust way. This is just a little map of the 300 cities that have signed on. So you can see there is a kind of concentration in the flyway, and especially the central flyway area. Texas has been just such a champion on this. We have 72 cities and towns in Texas who have taken the pledge. So it represents probably about 11, those cities represent probably about 11 million people. So, more than a third of our population is living in a city or town where the mayor has made this commitment. So we're very proud of what Texas has done. And Oklahoma has done, there are 8 cities in Oklahoma that have taken the pledge, so more to do there. But and we also have something called the Leadership Circle, where if you take 8 actions there, so there are several in the Leadership Circle in both states. So I want to talk a little bit about a little more detail on the pledge itself, just to kind of walk through the actions. So the mayor decides to take the pledge. That's the first step, and it involves things like creating demonstration habitats or doing some kind of public education campaign, or sometimes it's changing mowing practices or other kinds of, or trying to introduce habitat onto city lands or whatever. So they take the pledge and they decide on what their actions are going to be, what that particular city is going to commit to. And we try to, there are things that really any city can do. So it's not necessarily stuff that requires a big appropriation of money or anything like that. So so these are things that they can do. Some of them, go into it more than others, but everybody can do it. So just to describe this a little bit more, there's basically 3 categories of action. So communications and convenings is one. So that might be launching a neighborhood challenge to create habitat, or doing some kind of citizen education, or a lot of cities are doing kind of monarch festivals where they have people come out and they do tabling and offer them resources and so on. So that's one way to do it. Program and demonstration gardens. So often at a city hall or in a major park or something, there's, the city will create a demonstration habitat. And that isn't just a nice habitat, but it's usually one that has signage or that has, materials so that you can go into that habitat and learn something about it. So it's actually demonstrating certain kinds of principles, or they have the plants labeled or something. So it's kind of a learning experience. And then systems change refers to just changes in practices that the city is going to do. So like I said, they might refrain from using pesticides in certain areas, or changing their mowing practices, or just establishing parklands as centers for habitat or something like that. So that's the mayor's Monarch Pledge. We have, I'm not going to just read all this, but anyway, lots and lots of participation. And they also, this is a very cool project, and it's been really fun as a way of building a community of practice among cities. So pretty early in this work, we issued this solutions guide is what we call it. It's a publication, but it's online, and it just gives, if a mayor is saying, like, I don't know much about monarchs, I don't know what to do, it really gives them a lot of ideas. It gives them case studies. It gives them sort of sample ordinances or sample proclamations or things like that really just help them, get moving on this kind of thing. So this has been a very popular item, and in concert with this, we have done webinars. We do a series of webinars with usually city staff, and this is an opportunity for them to hear from experts, but also often for them to learn from each other. So there is a really wonderful community of practice that is kind of emerging around urban monarch conservation, spurred by this type of thing. So that's really fun. It's wonderful for us to be in contact with the actual people in cities who are doing this work. We do require the mayors to report to us so we can kind of keep track of what they're doing and ultimately keep track of how many acres of habitat and other kinds of changes that are made. So there is a reporting requirement with the Mayor's Monarch Pledge. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about a more in-depth sort of project National Wildlife Federation has with certain large cities, which is in addition to urging cities all over the country to take the pledge. We are in big cities where we feel like we'll get a lot of kind of bang for the buck. We are actually organizing. We have staff. Some of you know Grace Barnett, who is our biggest monarch hero. She has organized what we're calling Monarch Networks in key large cities, a lot of them in Texas, but some up through the Flyway. And these are kind of really the ground troops. It's kind of organizations of volunteers like, native plant societies or master gardeners or sometimes the Keep America Beautiful chapter or the local botanical garden or groups like that have a natural interest in this type of thing and would be often a natural repository of either volunteers or expertise. But they all have jobs or they all have, they have limited time. So we are kind of coordinating these groups to work with the cities to develop a kind of customized citywide plan for that city on monarch conservation. So it's kind of a way of assisting the cities with, kind of troops of volunteers and expertise within their city to make it a real community-wide effort. So these are just some of the logos of some of the monarch networks, and that's a list of some of the ones that we've done. These are some of the pictures of them. So this is, let me see if I can, so the one on the top left is Fayetteville, Arkansas. On the top right is San Antonio. Then bottom left is Fort Worth. And then our newest Monarch Network is really based in McAllen, but it's kind of the Rio Grande Valley Network. And they are also really going great guns. They're a very recent addition to this. There hasn't been all that much work going on in South Texas, but they are really gung-ho and are monarch champions and stuff. So this is a new group, and they're very excited. Just a couple of other examples. Am I doing on time? This is a map we did for there's a huge network in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and all of those cities happily are kind of working together, so we don't have sort of separate activities. And so one of the things we did for them was just to kind of map out all of the areas in that metro area where there are either kind of habitat, demonstration habitats or other kinds of activities going on. So this is just a little, you can see just how much activity there is in that part of the state. This is a plant list, so this is typical of a type of a resource that would be developed out of these monarch networks when these can be handed out at festivals or other events. And so this is one the City of Austin or the Austin Network did. But, to tell people, how do you plant, milkweed, or or what kinds of plants, nectar plants should you plant in this area, and where can you get them, and what time of year do you plant them, and so on. So just lots of just kind of handy resources, what to do with the soil and so on. This is, as I was mentioning, this is the cover of the Oklahoma City's Monarch Conservation Plan. I think it's very cool looking. And the plans really are interesting in that they're not all of them have finished them yet, but they really are a plan that's customized to each city, and each one has a little bit different flavor. So, for example, the San Antonio plan is very focused on kind of workshops and training and citizen science. That's just a big focus for them. Dallas is really interested, this probably won't surprise people, but they're really interested in changing landscaping practices. Dallas is an area where people are used to planting kind of English roses and things, so the idea of native plants and plants for pollinators and stuff is just kind of not natural to the culture of that city, but this Monarch Network is really focused on kind of changing that. Fayetteville is really interested in demonstration habitats, and Oklahoma City has got a lot of involvement of schools. And all of them do that, and we have some school programs as well. But Oklahoma City has had a particular interest in involving schools as part of their community. So each one, and this is a kind of a great thing about it, each one it's not like a menu or a set of rules. It's like each city decides what makes sense for them. That becomes their monarch conservation plan. So there's lots of variety there. I'm going to just quickly offer just a few thoughts about what the city of Austin is doing. It's my hometown, very proud of the city of Austin, and they were an early adopter of being a community wildlife habitat. They did that quite a while. And Austin was the first city in Texas to take the Mayor's Pledge, which was in the fall of 2015. Let's see. I think this is a site of where all of the community wildlife habitats or backyard habitats are in Austin. So this is an example of one of the things that the city of Austin has done. They have issued a pollinator challenge, and this is a sign that kind of signifies that. And there's certain things that if you do them, and you can kind of demonstrate you do them. And so it's planting certain types of plants and having a water source and other kinds of things that just make up a good monarch habitat in your yard or on your church grounds or wherever you want to do it. Then you get this monarch butterfly crossing sign. So this is the pollinator challenge that the city of Austin has done. This is also an interesting story. So the city had decided they would alter their mowing practices to make sure that they weren't cutting down milkweed or other plants that would be useful. So they just put up signs initially that said no mowing, and they were constantly getting calls from people saying, "This looks crummy, come mow this," so this, you can see on the left that there is a sign there, but that place has been mowed. So they decided to take a more affirmative approach, and they created these things called Monarch meadows. And so they have now signs that not just saying no mowing, but they say, this is a monarch garden, this is a monarch meadow, and they have signage for that, so people kind of understand, why these plants are growing the way they are. So that was just an interesting innovation and a sign of real responsiveness. They also have a wildflower meadow program, and people can adopt a meadow and commit to maintaining it for 3 years and stuff. So this is another program that the city of Austin has done. The mayor issued a proclamation, kind of declaring the city's intention to create monarch habitat in parkland. So these are some of our staff and volunteers just kind of celebrating that. And I'm going to end with this slide, which is a signal of an example of a program we've developed for our school-based work. We do a lot of work with schools anyway, called Monarch Heroes. And this is a program it's a 2-year program. It involves students and teachers in addressing and doing something positive about a real-world conservation problem, which is the decline of monarch butterflies. And it really gets these kids involved in solving that problem. And they really know that it's something that is very accessible to even very young children. And they are doing something about it. And I got to tell you, we've been working with schools for a long time. And this program has been so exciting to people. And the teachers love it, the school districts love it, the kids love it, parents love it. And it's just because everybody knows, or most children can recognize a monarch butterfly. It's one of the, few that they may understand, and the whole migration journey is very interesting and dramatic. And these are little kids you can see what age they are and how happy they look. And they are doing something about this, that this creature is in trouble, and they are helping. And they also, in the second year, there's a citizen science component of it, so they learn to tag them and, send the information off to other people and stuff. So it's really been a wonderful program. And I kind of end with this because I love thinking about not just what we as adults can do, but how we are engaging children and the next generation in addressing some of these problems. So this is how we're doing it, and very, very proud of that. Thank you.